Well, hello.
Hi, friends. Hi, friends and neighbors.
Welcome to June.
Sure. I believe it because my calendar tells me so.
Like, I just hit 28 days straight streak on Duolingo, and I feel like I started yesterday.
I also feel like you started 6 years ago. So, what is time? I got my first birthday card the other day, though. So, it must be June. It must be June.
It must be June. I gave you your birthday present already, so it must be June.
It's true. You did.
It must be June.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and the weather is acting June-ish, which helps.
Yeah, it's cold here today.
Oh, is it? It's not here. You're going to get warmth when you come out.
It's like 65 and raining.
Gross.
I have a cuppa. It's actually, it's nice. It's a quiet rain, though, you know?
Fantastic. I can't hear or see the out of doors from my office, as you know, so there could be an apocalypse happening.
You wouldn't know.
And I would have no idea.
Yeah. No, it's been a very, not an aggressive rain. We keep getting aggressive rain.
Well, then the weather is very different than our topic today, which is an aggressive topic.
It is an aggressive topic. All right.
Like we said, you've heard everyone else's opinion in the world on this trial.
You know you want
now
ours.
It's time to hear ours.
You know you want it.
We, of course, will be coming with a slightly different perspective than some people, and just a kind of general societal analysis around trial by media and intimate partner violence. So just we are aware that YouTube's going to demonetize the absolute living hell out of this, and we're not even going to try to not have it demonetized.
No, just let all the swear words go.
We're going to have them all. We're going to say we're going to say sexual assault. We're going to say all of the things this trial was about, which YouTube doesn't like. So, but anyone joining us live or in the replay crew, hello. We're delighted to have you. If you've got questions or concerns or specific, how did they get away with this kind of stuff about this trial, the chat is active and we are certainly minding it. So, but before we get into the Captain Jack Sparrow of it all, let us talk about empathy exercises. And ironically, we're going to be going to one of the witnesses in the trial first. So let's hear what Jason Momoa is up to.
Oh, lol, JK. I didn't know he was a witness. That's hilarious. I paid zero attention to the details of the trial.
Yeah, because she was in Aquaman with him.
Oh, yes, that's right. So this came across my newsfeed last week while we were down in the great state of Georgia. And it's the announcement of a movie produced by Jason Momoa's production company On the Roam and directed by Christian Camargo called The Last Manhunt. And it's kind of a reimagining of a very famous indigenous story from Southern California that has not really been told from the perspective of indigenous people before. So it's sounds like a fascinating film that actually centers indigenous stories. Momoa has done a lot of work on this because he is Native Hawaiian. And his partner is as well the guy who's directing, I believe. Both Native Hawaiians, sorry, Momoa and Sibit. So I'm really excited about this. It's going to be on, I think, Apple TV Plus or something I can't have, but I'll find it somewhere. But it's a cool story about this, it's, reframing one of those stories that's usually told about white people engaging with Indians, where this one's this story's actually about Indian people. How about we do that? So I'm excited for it. I like that Momoa is leveraging his Aquaman Game of Thrones-ness to like tell Indigenous stories. It's super rad. So keep doing it.
Big fan.
Big fan.
I was just told by Roxanne that the witness thing was that it was fake on TikTok, but I saw like actual newspapers report that. So this case is going to be fun to talk about. Moving on.
Oh boy. Something else that is possibly fun to talk about is, wow, I just got a giant ad by Reuters. Thank you. British Columbia has decided to temporarily decriminalize some drug possession. So it's apparently the epicenter of the country's overdose crisis. And they've asked the federal government for an exemption, which is the first time they've done it in Canada, and intended to reduce the stigma associated with substance use and make it easier for people to approach law enforcement and other authorities. So we're big fans of destigmatization here at this channel, and people getting a more empathetic and holistic understanding of people who are addicted to all various kinds of substances, and finding a way to maybe not criminalize them so much and help them really recover from their addiction. So we'll see what happens in BC because of this. It's only temporary, but we'll see what kind of data they get out of it, and if hopefully it helps folks. But since we talk about addiction and the opioid crisis here all the time, I was like, hey, this is kind of like a sort of quasi update for our dope sick coverage. But we'll see how it goes. This process is happening in various stages all around the world where governments and jurisdictions are experimenting with ways to treat the overdose and opioid crisis. So here's hoping.
And we should say the Peabody Award-winning Dope Sick.
Yes, they won Peabody yesterday, and it was Danny Strong's birthday. Happy birthday, Danny.
So Jay, our Canadian correspondent, lets us know that it is a trial run to bigger reform of sorts up in Canada. So hopefully that's true. And Roxanne was watching Emily D. Baker, which I normally do as well, and came over to see us live. So Roxanne, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for the switch, friend. We're happy to have you.
All right. So this one's from me, and it is an incredible BuzzFeed news piece about the fact that it takes about 100 people to save a gunshot victim. From the EMTs to the people who work in hospitals. If you trace out all of the various support people that it takes, I'm just scrolling, pathology lab, respiratory care, one bullet can kill, but it takes more than 100 people to save a gunshot victim's life. This is incredibly prescient here in Philadelphia because we are, even though you wouldn't know it from watching a lot of other things, we've been one of the epicenters of gun violence for a really long time. Yeah. And we had our first categorized mass shooting in town this past weekend, but I've heard of much higher. We have like a 350% increase over 2019 in the last couple of years. So every hospital here has become very good at gunshot wounds in the same way that hospitals in Northern Ireland got very good at removing shrapnel and doing knee replacements. So this is one of the things. I deeply encourage you to read this and sit with these faces and these people. And the fact that gun violence is often not what these people signed up to save. Mm-hmm. And it's a particular kind of trauma over some other traumas that we could think about. And unfortunately, speaking of gunmen.
I know, I was about to say, we didn't plan this transition. But this news piece came across my desk that there was a shooting the other day in Nigeria. Dozens of people are feared to have died after a gunman attacked a church in Nigeria.
Oh, I think we're up to higher. I think we're up to 30 confirmed dead. Let me double check that.
Oh, at least 50 people.
There we go. Yeah, there was updates coming in.
Yeah, so it was both an explosion and a gun attack occurred outside the church during Mass celebrating Pentecost Sunday. And, I did this as an empathy exercise because we are, especially in the United States here, rightfully so, very much focused on our gun violence epidemic. But it happens all over the world in various incarnations. We are certainly the highest number per capita number of shootings, you name it. But it's worth remembering that this happens a lot of places. and especially religiously motivated attacks. Obviously, the mass shooting that we had in Pittsburgh a couple of years ago was an anti-Semitic religious attack at the Tree of Life complex, where there were 2 synagogues practicing on Saturday, and religious persecution. There's been a lot of violence behind that as well. So I thought this was a good empathy exercise as a reminder that as good as it is for us to be in a period of self-examination in the United States, it is always good to be mindful of what's going on elsewhere.
And from a religious liberty perspective, I'll say that we almost never see terrorist attacks this far south in Nigeria. So this is a real escalation in a way that has a lot of us watching very closely. Additionally, a gentle reminder to a lot of American Christians who consider persecution to be like they can't wear a pin at Christmas or something. This is what actual global church persecution looks like, and we should keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for delightfully happy news coming to us from the land of Scotland, the Church of Scotland General Assembly has finally voted after many years to allow Church of Scotland pastors and priests to perform same-sex ceremonies in churches of Scotland. Now, Church of Scotland is a Presbyterian church. It's not Anglican, it's not Catholic, it is Presbyterian, and it is very conservative, despite the kind of progressiveness of the rest of the Scottish population. The church has always been very conservative. This is massive and landmark, and I'm so thrilled. And I already heard from a Scottish friend who had a civil ceremony, and they're planning a religious one this fall. And I'm delighted for them that they will be able to stand in a church and have the traditional John Wesley written vows that they want to do. So amazing. In excellent news, good job, Scotland. Well done.
Woohoo!
All right. Here we go. Let's get a couple things out of the way first. Do this. 1, neither one of us watched the trial.
Nope.
Not a single second of it.
Not a
I
damn
normally watch Emily D. Baker religiously. Woman did too much coverage. Could not keep up. Could not.
Yeah.
We are not interested in re-adjudicating the trial at all. What we are here to talk about is the fact that it was tried and convicted on TikTok before it was in a thing.
Court of law.
Court of law. Thank you so much. Thank you for supplying that word that my brain would not. And the societal ramifications and the parasocial relationships that drive a lot of the belief about who Johnny Depp is. And that has protected him for so many years, and what that kind of looks like. So we're going to be doing, in typical Good Doctors fashion, everything but the actual thing, and talking about all the stuff around it. So that to be said, Roxanne, I am sure you will have so much more info than we will, since you tell us you watched it every day, about the specifics of things. We have lots of analysis. We have lots of, we've read a lot of people talking about it, kind of thing. And so a lot of those are in the downstairs. The number one article I recommend is by Michael Hobbs, who is a thinker I recommend. It's like him and Linda Holmes are like 2 of my pantheon. Whenever they write something, I'm going to listen to it. Michael's breakdown is called The Bleak Spectacle of the Amber Heard Johnny Depp Trial. So you can find that in the downstairs.
Yeah.
Okay. That all out of the way. Point the first. We would like to gently remind everybody that this is not a criminal trial, because criminal trials about sexual assault in the United States really do not happen. They often get settled out of court. They often get trials of this kind of magnitude are often historic. They're often other things. Harvey Weinstein's is a criminal trial because the Justice Department has brought charges against him. Bill Cosby's was a criminal trial. It is much more common in the United States to see sexual assault prosecuted civilly.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the things that was most frustrating for us as outside observers who have social media accounts, was seeing the number of people coming out and supporting, Johnny Depp by saying, we have to help him. We have to, this is ridiculous. He could go to jail.
No.
And people kept saying, like, what if he gets convicted? And all of this language, and I'm gonna say it's Law and Order's fault for making us all think that we're like criminal attorneys because we've watched Law and Order. Just like we all think we're forensic crime scene investigators because we watched CSI. There's a lot of armchair legal and criminal experts all around there that are like, well, I saw this once on SVU and this is how it happened. And for me, that was, but I was like, but it's a civil, but it's defamation. He's not facing jail time. Like, that is one of the most basic aspects of this case. It's very complicated legally. It can be defamation. Law is complicated, but like straight up, the fact that people assume in this country culturally that like every trial, especially, and I was thinking about it as you said it, like every major televised trial we have of celebrities is criminal. It's like we don't have usually celebrities or civil lawsuits televised at all. So I think people just lumped it into like OJ, Bill Cosby, Harvey Weinstein, Menendez, like all those like really iconic publicly televised trials. But it's a real key piece of information, and there was a lot of unnecessary outrage on behalf of Johnny Depp because he could go to jail. And I was like, but no, he's suing her for defamation. At no point was Johnny Depp on trial.
No.
And for me, the fact that like everyone persisted in viewing it that way was very indicative of, as we are going to talk about today, these larger cultural issues of misogyny and the way we talk about intimate partner abuse and violence and the way we treat victims and perpetrators and all of that stuff. But yeah, for me, that was the one, like, I would come across a tweet and be like, but it's a civil case. And like, I'm not a legal scholar, but I understand the difference between civil and criminal.
The other thing that people kept really harping on was the fact that he was already found guilty in the UK. So a couple things. He wasn't. What happened was he sued the Sun tabloid for calling him a wife beater. And in defending themselves, because libel and defamation laws are hella tough in the UK, they are real fierce, the High Court asked the Sun to bring evidence. And the Sun brought a lot of evidence from Amber Heard that the judge therefore found in the Sun's favor. Right. Amber Heard was technically not involved legally in that case. She just brought evidence.
Nor was this a criminal case.
Nor was it a criminal case. Johnny Depp loves suing people. It's just one of the things he's done his whole career. And so this is just what he did. Now, the judge in the UK did say that this is where some people are taking far too much wiggle room. So the judge in the UK admitted that there were times that Amber's behavior triggered Johnny's abuse. Problems with that. Because of the scope of what the UK was asked to do, they didn't really ever talk to her and get context. All the judge in the UK was looking for was, did the Sun pass the burden of proof to call him a wife beater? I mean, that's it. That's what the whole thing was. And they found, by the way, that they did. There was enough evidence. There are two particular incidences that Johnny frequently uses in legal cases to say that it was mutual abuse, which does not exist. And the case that the UK judge said took place at, I think he was giving a Lifetime Achievement Award to somebody, and he took a sip of alcohol backstage, and Amber, according to him, like lost her shit and belittled him. And the judge in the UK was like, yeah, she should watch that. People have now taken that and run with it. What the judge in the UK didn't understand, know, or possibly care about, I don't know anything about that judge, is that at that point, this was like his second or third journey into sobriety during their marriage. He was 6 months sober. And I'm sure I have known people that have been married to addicts. you are not a rational person the first time you see them use again, especially after they have abused you while using, which is what happened with Johnny and Amber. So just those couple things. And additionally, just a quick heads up for anyone who is confused about this. What happens in other legal systems does not matter in ours. Like, not even a little bit.
You guys.
It's not gonna be a thing. And finally, I just learned today that the jury wasn't sequestered in like the biggest social media trial since OJ. In terms of like public furor around it. The jury wasn't sequestered. So, and some of that is because civil trials, I don't think, are ever sequestered.
Probably not.
I mean, why would you be sequestered for a civil trial? Except when it involves one of the biggest movie stars in the world, perhaps we should consider.
And you're televising it. Like, so to your first point, this was the cross-jurisdictional confusion, shall we say.
And also, this wasn't federal court. It was the state of Virginia. He sued her for defamation in the state of Virginia because that is where the Washington Post is published. So this wasn't even a federal court.
It was not there. And laws are different in different places. And that was not a thing I thought needed to be said repeatedly, but the number of people who were mad that the UK, like, that he didn't win a case in the UK. There were lots of misinterpretations of that. I was like, but this is different legal systems. It's different legal systems. Like, we learned about Brazil that their legal system is based on the Spanish Inquisition. Like, different places have different legal systems.
It's why people try to extradite criminals so they can try them under their own legal system.
Yeah. Banana pants. Also, the non-sequestering thing seems to me to be a misstep there from the judge. I agree with you. I'm sure civil cases aren't usually, they don't need to be because it's things like libel and defamation and they're not televised for everyone. But like, it's Johnny Depp.
Yeah, there was a couple times where I don't think it does not appear to me in reading analysis. I did read the jury instructions because Emily Baker's video about that was digestible. People truly understood what was happening here.
Yeah, and Roxanne says that Amber's side did not ask for the jury to be sequestered. I'm imagining is what Roxanne means by that. But again, I would still say like the judge should have maybe, I don't know.
So what does that mean? It means that the United States got to try this trial by social media and decide who Amber is and who Amber isn't. There are a lot of pieces of this. So now there are 3 points, I think, in organizing this, now that we've kind of gotten all of that out of the way and what we actually think this trial was about and what the coverage of it tells us in a certain way. So let's talk really briefly about the myth of a perfect victim. Then I'd like to talk about parasocial relationships and celebrity. And then let's wrap up with just a general rape culture that we live in. Does that work as an organizing principle?
Yes, although I already forgot your first category, but you will remind us.
Okay, so let's talk about the myth of the perfect victim.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, I remember.
There is no such thing. So one of the things that happened a lot in this trial is that people spent a lot of time picking apart Amber's behavior. There's a lot wrong with this. One is that just because Amber was or was not abused does not, or Amber was or was not harmful physically, emotionally, or psychologically to Johnny, that does not preclude him being an abusive presence in her life. This isn't a zero-sum game. So that's problematic. The other is that she does not appear to be super pleasant all the time. And this therefore meant that she was not allowed to be a victim in the minds of a lot of people. She misspoke sometimes on the stand. That's not perjury. She, really kind of got really nervous, or there were times that she fought back, or the famous poop in the bed incident, which she claims were their dogs. There was lots of like nitpicking a part of like every single incident that she wasn't the ideal, virginal, perfect, white, like, you know, white skin, blonde hair, blue eyed, angelic human. And the contention of the perfect victim myth is that if you do anything that could possibly be construed as quote unquote asking for it, then you deserve what is coming to you. This goes with people asking sexual assault survivors what they were wearing. This is the same energy. It does not matter. Additionally, this is also, I'll just say this really briefly, we'll get into parasocial in a minute, but like, this isn't a secret. Like, Johnny Depp's been a known asshole for a long time. And like, people were writing about his assholery on 21 Jump Street. Like, he is kind of always who he was in his marriage appears to be like who he was a lot of other places. Like, this doesn't appear to be like a secret. And to say that because she was annoying, or she was a bad actress, or she yelled at him in public and belittled him, does not mean that he didn't do everything she says he did. So that's kind of the myth of the perfect victim. And I wanted to cover that first.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have anything to add to that. Suffice to say that the one thing I heard a lot was that every time she got caught out in a lie, that meant she was lying about the abuse.
No.
And like, as you said, that goes to this idea of the way we frame victims and survivors of intimate partner violence, harassment, abuse, verbal, physical, you name it, especially when it's gendered, but almost always this way. This perceived power dynamic between the male abuser and the female victim, or the marginalized victim group, is that it is incumbent on the victim to prove what happened to them,
mm-hmm.
to be unassailable,
mm-hmm.
to be the perfect performance. She was too emotional. She wasn't emotional enough. She cried too much. She didn't cry. She was angry. And it was, I don't know what their marriage was. I don't know what kind of person Johnny Depp is. All I know is what I have seen and what other people have talked about. So I'm not weighing in on like any of that. I'm just saying it's a real bad framework to look at allegations, because the presumption of, and we have a legal system that presumes innocence, and that's not a bad thing. But
only in criminal, though. It doesn't in civil.
Yeah, but we tried this culturally, and we have this presumption as well. And I saw a lot of people saying that this wasn't about innocence or guilt in this specific.
It's about
incident.
liability.
It was about defamation.
Mm-hmm.
But we take the innocent till proven guilty too far, because we use it to neglect evidence, and we use it to discredit victims and survivors. And so that was one of the things we both saw that ties into what we'll get into at the end, which is this larger rape culture issue, where what I found so disturbing was the absolute insistence that it was incumbent upon Amber to be the perfectly performed idea of a victim in order to be believed.
Mm-hmm.
With no understanding of trauma or the fact that people are complicated, and she might be an asshole too. Who knows? Doesn't mean she wasn't abused because she was an asshole.
Yes, this comes to the deal. The fundamental case is that really truly at the core of it, a defamation case says that you were, so the difference, like libel and defamation are like blood brothers here. He could have sued the Washington Post for libel.
Yeah.
But he sued her for defamation because it was an op-ed and she was writing for herself. So he sued an entity. the whole thing, his claim in claiming defamation, this is what defamation is that she made a statement that defamed his character and caused him pain of some way, either in lost business, in lost reputation, in lost relationship. According to Scuttlebutt, he lost the role of Grindelwald in the Wizarding movies because of that op-ed. That's never, like, Warner Brothers has never come out, to my knowledge, and actually said that, but that's like a kind of understood thing. So that's the genesis of this whole thing, is that he lost a role in a movie franchise that has not done very well anyway. And that it, like,
did he lose, really?
Yeah, did he really? Poor, you know, and honestly, he shouldn't have been cast anyway. It should have always been Mads Mikkelsen, but that's a whole other ballgame. So it's anything else is that. So a lot of what his lawyers appeared to do, according to the legal analysis that I have read, is prove that she is so heinous as to do this because she made it all up. And how dare she do all of this? So I'll say statistically, before we move on to parasocial, statistically, intimate partner violence, we know that only 0.03% of assault victims assault claims are false. We also know that that her story has been corroborated by friends and colleagues since 2013. So if she did make this all up, wow, that's impressive. And somebody should give her an Academy Award. So that's kind of just a couple quick things. Now, on to parasocial relationships. What that means is that a lot of us think we know Johnny Depp because he was incredibly charming as Captain Jack Sparrow, or he was in Edward Scissorhands, or we grew up with his poster on our wall. And we think he is who he is. We think we know him because we're a fan of his. This is parasocial relationships. There's a certain level at which, like, we have them with YouTube people. Like, you guys may have a very specific perception of us that we try very hard to be real. People have affirmed that we are who we say we are, so that's exciting. But there's a lot of other people that craft very specific things, that craft certain personas, that, you know, and that you have a relationship with who the person shows you they are. One of the more famous ones recently that people talk about a lot is the parasocial relationship a lot of people have with Chris Evans, is that they assume that he is Steve Rogers and that he is Captain America because they have a parasocial relationship with his character. And a lot of the roles that he's taking now, if you look at the description, I think is a lot of him letting everybody know he is not Steve Rogers.
Yeah. He's like, can you imagine him talking to his agent? And he's like, well, Chris, you know, what kind of roles are you looking for? And he's like, anything that says not Steve Rogers at the top.
Do you have a
Thank
cannibal?
You so much.
I'm looking for that energy right now. So
it's just giant, like, sticky note in his agent's desk that says not Steve Rogers. So, but that's a lot of people. So people sneak into his house or try to sneak onto his property because they're already friends with him in their minds. So that's an extreme parasocial, but we all have it on a certain level. Like, anytime, if you feel a certain, like, oh, when you find out that somebody was really abusive, it's probably because you have a parasocial relationship with them. So the fact that this was Johnny Depp and is somebody who had a career comeback, he was really persona, for anyone who doesn't remember, he was pretty persona non grata before the first Pirates movie. And it would, like, he was kind of washed up. No one really, like, hung out with him. And then the Pirates movie happened and he became who he is now. A little bit like Downey with Iron Man. So just without the jail time. And Johnny has since Pirates crafted a very specific public persona. He has also very publicly and very frankly struggled with drug and alcohol addiction for his entire life, if not, you know, his entire adulthood. So these are a couple of things that we know, but what we saw really quickly is that he was really careful, litigiously. He sent really strong signals that he was a victim by suing the Sun, by suing Amber, by suing other people, which then triggered this belief that we should believe male victims. And this is where things get really tricky. Are there male sexual assault victims? Absolutely. However, one of the things about abuse versus assault, abuse often involves a power dynamic. Assault doesn't always.
So that's why there's no such thing as mutual abuse, is because abuse has to involve a power dynamic, usually. So Johnny was significantly more powerful than Amber in this particular circumstance. And so in crafting his parasocial and crafting his public persona as the victim, it means that there's not a lot of conversations about evidence that she has, or we're viewing all of her evidence through the lens that Johnny has already provided for us. And that's difficult because people do want to believe men, because we have so often not believed young boys. And that's what made this case in particularly messy, that then connects to the fact that we have a rape culture.
Yeah, I don't. Parasocials is your soapbox. So as soon as you've hit what you wanted to say, I'm ready to move on.
It's all move on.
All right. Yeah. So we talk about rape culture here all the time. It's a little hobby horse of ours. And the aspects that exist therein. And you know, we talk about culture as kind of the soup that we swim in. And rape culture is a soup that we swim in which all of these things that we rail against here on this corner of the internet, the patriarchy, misogyny, sexism, intimate partner abuse, cultural appropriation, all kind of fit under this umbrella, in which we have a set of cultural and societal norms and values that are framed with the intent to question the victim or the accuser for their behavior. What it's come down to is, you know, we've talked about this a lot in the last number of years, especially high profile cases. The case of Sarah Everard, who was a young woman who was abducted and murdered by an off-duty London Metropolitan Police officer during the COVID. And there was a huge outcry over her disappearance and the recovery of her body and the way in which we talked about her behavior. And she was, quote unquote, the perfect behavior person, model. She was what we all are told we have to do to be safe in public spaces as women operating in this world. She had running shoes on. She had high visibility clothes. She was walking in well-lit, busy places. She texted her boyfriend when she left where she was going. Like, all of the questions that we ask of women to explain why they were a victim, she had the right answer for them, and she was still murdered and decapitated. So we've talked about this a lot in terms of the way that we talk about male violence against women as an epidemic, and we have removed the perpetrator from that. We call it violence against women. And therefore, linguistically and socially, the focus becomes on the only, person that is identified in that sentence, which is the woman. What did she do? What did she say? The burden of proof is always on her to not only prove what happened, but to be the type of victim that we have been socially conditioned to accept. And so that is all of the aspects that we've already talked about on this live, and that we have seen throughout this trial was what was both not surprising at all to Kristen and I, and also disturbing because, and we've got, I think, 4 or 5 reflection and think pieces in the downstairs on the ramifications of this. Because that's the other thing we want to look at when we talk about rape culture and what this trial did is what is the impact of it going forward on how we understand and listen to victims and survivors, how we conceptualize victims and how we conceptualize abuse. All of that falls into this category, and every horrible thing that perpetuates rape culture was present in this trial, like in his prosecution of the defamation, but also in the social media that we saw. and the TikToks and the YouTubes and all the people who were weighing in, as you said, we're weighing in through that lens that we have. And that is why we wanted to have this conversation eventually. Because we knew, regardless of the outcome, we've been paying attention to the trial. We knew that these methods of prosecuting a victim through a social and cultural lens were already present. So we wanted to kind of remind everybody what rape culture is and how insidious it is, and how we are all trained to participate in it and perpetuate it, because that's how the system works. So we're all part of upholding that, and it's our job to be able to take a step back and to recognize it. And I know a lot of people were saying that this was really upsetting for them to watch. I know a lot of oh God, her name's just absolutely escaped me, at the New York Times, who writes about this a lot. I can see her face.
Valenti? Jessica Valenti?
Nope, somebody else. Doesn't matter. But I know several people, Rebecca Traister, it came to me. Several people who write about these types of issues for a living were really discouraged by this trial, especially in the post-Me Too era, where we thought we had had a cultural reckoning about believing victims and survivors.
And I think the thing that gets me is that we did. Yeah. The issue here is that who is a victim got messy.
Yeah.
Like, it's really Harvey Weinstein's not a victim, like lol JK. Nor did he ever try to propagate himself that way, but Depp did. And it poked holes in the progress we thought we had made.
Yeah. But to those of us that study culture for a living, like, you cannot have one incident that changes something that is so deeply ingrained.
We've had rape culture since we started telling the story about how Eve bit the apple. Like, this isn't...
It's biblical, y'all.
Like, it's just not... Yeah,
it's hard to unlearn. Yeah, it's always hard to unlearn anything, especially on a large cultural scale. Like,
and like, one of these things is, we kept saying it, like he was going to win. And we knew that, first of all, because the burden of defamation is real low in the US. And second of all, because he knew exactly what he was suing for. Yeah. And he was going to win. And so our conversation throughout the whole thing, offline, the two of us, as we drove through various US states over the last couple of weeks, has really been, what does it mean? And one of them is that, I mean, like, this, just, defamation has been used against victims for a long time. It is one of the quickest ways and most significantly financially punishing ways to silence victims, especially people who are accusing powerful individuals in our society. So that this is, there's a lot of like pearl clutching over like, this just, this shows that defamation can be used. I was like, children, defamation's been being used forever. Like, what we need to do is agitate. If you really want change, you agitate for not allowing defamation to be used in sexual assault cases. And what that could look like, or explore that, or imagine that different world. But it's been used for a long, long time. And is this going to silence people? Absolutely. Are there going to be people that said, I'll come after you, like Johnny Depp came after Amber Heard? Absolutely. Are there going to be people that claim that certain victims are behaving like Amber? Yes. Is she going to become a verb? I think so. Is her career over? I think so. I don't see how a studio takes a risk on hiring someone like her, right, with the social media kryptonite that she kind of is right now. And all of that to say, these two people caused each other a lot of pain. And a lot of evidence points to the fact that he caused her quite a lot of physical, sexual, emotional, and psychological pain. She potentially caused him physical and psychological pain. Humans are really, really, really messy. And when we try to legally adjudicate human relationships, it can get really weird.
A little bit.
So this case became about whether or not he was abusive. But really all it was is if she was
Yeah.
It's so damn messy. That's why defamation is so insidious to use against victims, because then it has to begin to look like a criminal trial.
Right. And then it becomes a question of the capacity to lie or misrepresent as well. And that, like, the whole a lot of the focus of the trial, from what I saw, was about proving that she lied about things.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, this is another way in which victims are often discredited by their abusers.
Yeah, because trauma rewrites your brain.
Is poking holes in the story. Right. And so we know of all of these cases where victims of sexual assault and abuse can't recall things because of the trauma that they've been through, or recall things incorrectly at different times. And that is another part of rape culture that has been weaponized against victims, and that they have to have a perfect memory with no holes, or nothing that can be disproved, when that's not how brains work, and that's not how trauma works, and that's not how memory works.
No.
So yeah, for me, it's not surprising, but definitely disheartening going forward. I see what happened as a real setback, like, legally, and culturally, because you're right. Like, we saw examples, and we had images that we screenshotted for this live that we don't have with us because, you know, it's Tuesday, that were like cultural evidence of how this has permeated everything. And one of the examples that I couldn't find anymore because the pictures were taken down off Twitter was the Irish equivalent of Chipotle called Boojum. The place in Belfast, the location in Belfast had 2 tip jars, one with a picture of Johnny Depp on it, looking very handsome and sophisticated, and another with a picture of Amber Heard, like, looking really upset and crying miserably. We have the House Judiciary Republican Committee weighing in after the verdict came out, basically saying, you know, we believe Johnny Depp, and effectively what that says to victims and survivors is, we believe the abuser.
And one of the things that is so messy about this is that we can't say we believe victims, because he set himself up as a victim. What we need to have a difference instead is what, you know, we believe abuse has happened.
Yeah.
And then there's a level, like, this is why this case will take, like, I can see people writing PhDs on this thing.
Yeah.
Because this is, yeah. But what's telling to me is particularly about you know, this tweet is that they picked his most famous character. Yeah. It's not a picture of him.
It's not Johnny Depp. No, it's apparently
Captain
Jack Sparrow.
Captain Jack Sparrow was not on trial. Captain Jack Sparrow did not sue
for defamation. Right.
Like,
and
this
is the proof. This is the proof of your parasocial.
This is the parasocial conversation.
Yeah.
So, and then this other tweet here, we see this sign that somebody saw, we justice for Johnny. Everyone is welcome except Amber Heard. And a feminist writer will say this is like, she is becoming the stand-in for everything that everybody hates about women. And I think that is both true and slightly hyperbolic, because that's Jessica Valenti's job, is to be hyperbolic as a writer and a cultural critic in some ways. But I worry too, left-wing analysis of this is missing the fact of what he claimed and what that means and why people are believing him, and why that looks and what that necessarily means. It is possible that they were both victims of abusive actions. It's entirely possible. It doesn't mean that she's a liar. And that's what I think that's what I wish people were focusing on more, is that it's not a zero-sum game. While there's not mutual abuse, again, because of the power dynamic, she absolutely could have been abusive to him in her actions. it's I understand like language is real limited, but she doesn't have power over him in terms of society. So that's kind of what's happening here. And so I'm just concerned, I guess. I'm just concerned. We have a question from Tia who says, if we didn't watch the trial, how can we give an accurate assessment of what happened in their case? We're not trying to give an accurate assessment of the case. We are commenting on how it's been commented on, because that we did watch and that we are concerned about. And I have read lots of the evidence statements from other people, and we did not have the time or bandwidth to watch the entire trial. We simply did not, and we admit that. But there's lots of really good, solid summary statements. And I also read the whole judgment from the UK, and I've seen a lot of the evidence in some other ways and fashions, and I've seen the clips, and I get all of it. So even if, like I said, they both began to document his behavior towards her in 2013. And so there is quite a bit of evidence around that. But the judge did find that she defamed him, that she caused him, the jury found it, because she caused him financial and emotional harm. That doesn't mean that she's a liar. And that's also just true. So,
yeah. And I think too, like, in response to Tia's question, which is a great question, I don't think the majority of people that had opinions on this and shared their opinions publicly on social media watched the trial either. Like, so much of why we wanted to talk about this was because people didn't consume it by watching the trial. They consumed it through completely subjective TikTok accounts or YouTube accounts. So that was a part of the conversation that maybe we didn't explicitly say as well, was that we were getting so much of the public comments about this through that filter, whereby a lot of people were treating YouTube accounts, YouTubers and TikTok accounts, as if they were media outlets, without the same kind of burden of like factual representation. It was a lot of opinion and interpretation that was being read as fact that continued to perpetuate a lot of the misconceptions about what was happening in the trial as well, which is also something we wanted to comment on in this live and in this discussion, was that the majority of people in the country didn't watch the trial from like the news cameras that were in there. They watched it through other outlets, and that shaped a lot of our cultural and national perception of it as well.
Oh, it was fascinating. Like, we've traveled a lot in the last couple of weeks, and everywhere we've been, people have been talking about it. And a lot of, as I'm eavesdropping, it's, I saw this TikTok, or I did this and that kind of thing. We're coming at it as well. And I will admit, like, I didn't need a defamation case to like show me this evidence in a certain way. So like, I've been following this case for a long time. She first leveled these accusations many, many years ago. And this is also, like I said, he's kind of shown us who he is in some ways, in some other circumstances. And so it's not difficult for me to believe that he behaved this way to her. But again, that's not what the trial was really about. That they made the trial about whether or not she was a liar or not. And the rest of the country really clapped onto that. So that's also really, I guess, concerning in some ways. And also, I will just say, from a social science perspective, body language experts are fake. They're about as helpful as a polygraph. So all that to say,
yes.
We'll hit pause here. She's going to countersue. I doubt that anyone's going to cover it the same way that they covered this particular trial, but she will countersue, because that's what you do, and she'll keep going. He also is now needs to defend himself against a lawsuit from somebody else. So he'll probably, but being violent towards somebody on set, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
So he's moving on to another thing. So he may or may not stay in the news. And I'm hearing that she already countersued. Yeah, so that'll be going, and courts are moving at the COVID pace still, so who knows when we'll see that. Our great question, our great challenge to you as an empathy educators, and what that kind of looks like, is to always remember that there's humans in the middle of this, and that the humans that you're talking about and to are not always the humans who are listening. So be aware of categorical statements, be aware of sweeping generalizations, and try always to hold the humanity of the complicated and beautiful and redemptive humanity of everybody with you. We will be with you next week.
Probably. I know. I was just thinking.
Yeah, I think it's our last. I think it'll be our last live before the fall.
It's going to be our last live before the fall. Yeah, we're taking a break in most of June, but July and August. We're not sure what the lives are going to look like going forward, but we'll be back in some shape or form in September. We'll have announcements up on our YouTube channel. We'll make a little video for you guys explaining this, so that you in case you forget, but you're not seeing new videos from us. There's lots of videos on our channel. There's over 850. So if you have not watched all of them, you can find them and keep yourselves busy, or go elsewhere for a few months. But yeah, we don't know what we're going to talk about next week. We'll come up with something and we'll let y'all know. But we hope you join us. We hope you got something out of this. Thank you so much for joining us. Roxanne tells us that Handmaid's Tale is almost done filming. Okay, thanks, Roxanne. Maybe we'll have Handmaid's Tale in the fall. Who knows? I also agree with you, Roxanne. I think they were very toxic together in a relationship. Was not great. So we'll be back in the fall with some kind of coverage on our YouTube channel, and we're reformatting and relaunching season 2 of the podcast. So stay tuned for updates on that. But we'll see you next week with something else delightful, I'm sure.
We'll talk to you guys then. Take care. Bye.
Bye.